Hey you guys. So in this video, I kind of want to talk about Clair Obscure Expedition 33. This is a game that tons of people have been playing, tons of people have talked about this year. Some people saying it's clearly the game of the year. Some people saying how it's reinvented turn-based RPGs, and it's widened the audience of turn-based RPGs. And I think this game coming out has introduced a lot of different conversations around RPGs, around video games, indie games, big AAA games, etc. And I think they're all very interesting conversations. I think when Sandfall Interactive was making this game, I don't think they realized the type of conversations that would spur from it. I definitely think this is just a huge passion project from the small team, and that you know is very noticeable throughout this entire game. Um, but with all that being said, it did spark a lot of conversations. So after playing this game, after beating this game, I definitely have a lot of thoughts. Not just on like the kind of overall conversation. I definitely want to kind of dive deep into, you know, is this game more than what I think people are really talking about? Is it less than what people? Is it overhyped, etc., etc.? Um, so just real quick to preface this video, there will be spoilers if I see fit. So just kind of if you haven't played and beat the game and you're kind of cautious about spoilers, or you know you've been warned, just kind of keep that in mind. I'm not gonna steer clear from spoilers. Um, if I don't need to talk about it, I won't. But if I feel like I want to talk about it, I will. I will kind of also throughout all this video do like probably a quick review throughout the entire video. But overall, like, I mean, I don't think there's really a reason to review this game. I think most people have already like made the decision whether or not they should play this game. Spoiler alert: you should freaking play this game. It is amazing. But why is it amazing? Is it because it's a turn-based RPG that is incorporating action-based, aspects into it? Part of it, yeah, it definitely helps more of a mainstream audience, or maybe people who just aren't used to turn-based RPGs kind of play their first turn-based RPG. So I think that is very unique and very cool about it. Is it the first to ever do this, implement these type of engagement? No, but I do think it is taking what has already happened before it. Things like Super Mario RPG. It's taking aspects from things like Final Fantasy X. It's taking aspects just from all these other different RPGs that have paved a way for this game to kind of grow and flourish, and really, really, really kind of have this super dense, engaged, style of turn-based RPG that I definitely had a blast playing. Um, for you guys who don't know how the kind of their turn-based RPG works, there is your regular menu select where you can kind of choose your action kind of plays out, etc., etc. It goes your turn, then the enemy's turn, kind of throughout the wheel depending on speed, etc. um but the thing that kind of made it a little bit more cut above regular turn-based RPGs is one, the ability to parry, one, the ability to dodge, perfect dodge, and then like pressing X at the right time to kind of like give some of the special attacks a boost, or even healing a boost, etc., etc. um so definitely not the first game to ever do it. Again, things like Super Mario RPGs, Paper Mario's, etc., have done this. Last year, Sea of Stars did this. So this isn't the first game to ever do it. I think the thing that makes this game even more than just, oh yeah, press X at the right time, oh dodge at the right time, oh parry at the right time, is that it's not just doing it in the way that most turn-based RPGs do it. It's definitely doing it in a way that is more similar to an action game, where there's a lot more rhythm based. It feels a lot more kind of soulsy in the fact that every enemy has a kind of unique pattern, and once you kind of learn those patterns, you can tear them apart. You have a stagger meter that you can build up, and you can kind of like break them like they would in Sekiro. So I think that is something that obviously they're not pulling from some RPGs that are in the turn-based genre. I think they're definitely pulling that straight from a lot of action games. Again, is it the first to ever do it? No, but it does it really, really well. It definitely isn't trying to break the mold with that style of RPG. I definitely think they're just trying to kind of really, really perfect it, really, really pull all their talent together to make a system that, yes, has existed before, but take their own spin on it, and then also elevate it, make it more than what it was, yesteryear. And I think in that aspect, they definitely hit their mark. I think within this game, in their turn-based combat, it's definitely, you know, among the upper echelon of RPGs in this style. Something they also do to kind of like break away is the fact that every character in this plays very, very differently. They all have different things that you're trying to stack. They have different, multipliers and debuffs and buffs, etc. Different reasons why you would want to play a certain character. Um, as someone who kind of played all characters interchangeably, I definitely think there's a huge balance between, who I think is fun to play with and then who I think is very useful to play with. Um, Obviously, there's going to be like some characters that are just outright crazy good. Like my L is just insanely good. I think it gets to a certain point in the game where you're kind of really, really just dependent on my L, which is fine because it, blends narrative and the gameplay pretty well. But beyond that, I think some of the other characters definitely they're gonna have really interesting ways that they can engage the enemy, different ways that they're trying to stack, damage multipliers, etc. And I think that is something that they definitely took the time to really think out fully for each character. I think a lot of, their development process probably came into, hey, how do we make every character different from the other? How do we make players want to play these different characters? And I think definitely you can, look back at other RPGs like Final Fantasy X, for example, and say, hey, yeah, like you would pull Lulu out when there was an elemental damage that needs to be dealt. You'll pull Auron out when you need to like break armor, etc., etc. You'll pull Yuna out when you need to heal. Like those type of things existed in other RPGs clearly. Ways to differentiate them, situations that you would want to kind of like lean on one over another. But I definitely think this game, again, they take it a step further by making just their, strategy and gameplay very, very different per, situation, per engagement. Every enemy feels very, very different as how you want to approach it. I definitely think it adds a level of strategy that I was kind of consistently thinking about throughout this game of, hey, if I'm going to use, CL and she's going to stack her Fortel, how am I going to stack as much Fortel as fast as possible? And then how am I going to, deal that damage back out or heal myself, etc. Definitely stuff like that I think makes the game a lot more engaging than I think the typical turn-based RPG. And again, like just to kind of clear this out, I am a huge fan of turn-based RPGs, traditional, modern, etc. Like I love them. I played tons of them from Final Fantasy to Dragon Quest to Shin Megami Tensei. Like that is a genre that I absolutely love. With that being said, I understand that people, especially in the modern era, probably aren't used to that. I grew up playing turn-based RPGs, but a lot of kids don't. The amount of times I've told a friend like they should play a game that's a turn-based RPG, and then the second they see it's turn-based, they get really, really thrown off. So I think this way definitely makes it feel a lot more like they're doing something, a lot more action-based, a lot more consistent flow. You have to be engaged at every moment. You can't just, you know, say action and sit back. You have to make sure that you're ready to dodge, parry, make sure that you're stacking abilities in a way that are going to benefit you long term, etc., etc. So, with all that being said, if you look at their way of combat and the way that they engage with combat, I definitely think they pulled out a lot of things that people don't like in RPGs, especially turn-based RPGs. Things like grinding. Like realistically speaking, back then, if you hit a kind of a wall and you can't proceed further, typically what you do is you go around, you grind out until you're at a strong enough level where you can kind of just get past that wall. And adding things like the parry, adding things like the dodge, definitely allow people, you know, a different option than just grinding. You don't have to just level up. The amount of times I needed to grind in this game wasn't often, especially compared to turn-based RPGs. What I did do a lot in this game was, learn patterns, you know, come back, die, attempt this, learn when they're going to attack, how they're going to attack, learn how am I going to deal damage to most of them. It definitely felt more of an approach to a Souls game than it would be a regular turn-based RPG. And I think that's something that a more modern audience can digest faster. Hey, if I could just learn how to parry these, one, high reward. Yeah, it's a little risky, but once I think, like, especially parrying being just kind of in almost every game nowadays, especially action-based games, I think people are just very, very aware of how that works. That's something that's very, very digestible for a more modern audience, specifically a more action-driven audience. And this is a good way to kind of connect them into it. And I think there's no, problems with that. I think there's certain people within the turn-based RPG, niche that are kind of upset about this. I don't know why. Like, I feel like they're kind of like putting their flag in the ground of saying, hey, Clair Obscure is bringing in an audience of people that don't appreciate turn-based RPGs, and they're kind of like, belittling some of the other turn-based RPGs that are amazing. And I think that's kind of a weird line to draw in the sand. I think, no one should try to gatekeep these things. If this is a way that other people can digest and, succeed in this genre, then I think it's definitely an approach that more developers should take. Hey, if this is a genre you love, how do you take a different spin on it that allows a wider audience to kind of engage with it? Audience of people who might not consider, playing a game like this is more inclined to play it if we take these different spins and making it more fleshed out in a way that speaks to them. It's not to take away anything from traditional turn-based RPGs. If anything, it's to play a lot more homage and making sure that this genre stays alive and is breathing. And again, not to say that turn-based RPGs are dying. There's Pokemon that comes out every year, etc. Like, games in this genre don't necessarily need something like Clair Expedition to, widen its genre in that sense. They are fine. They have a strong niche. They have a strong subculture, and that's great. And I think most people who make turn-based RPGs understand that. I definitely think when Sandfall was making Clair Expedition, I don't think they thought how wide of a net they were throwing when they developed this system. I think they were definitely throwing a net to try to catch as much people as possible, but I don't think anyone was able to expect this is how big the game would become. So again, just to kind of double back on the turn-based combat and what they're doing to kind of stand out, I don't think they're doing anything that we haven't seen before. I definitely think it is just them innovating a lot on what's already been done, reiterating on stuff that we've seen multiple times, but making it their own, one, and then two, making it more modernized for a modern audience, making it snappier, making it make more sense to them, making it more digestible to them. And I think that is awesome to see. Do I want every turn-based RPG moving forward to do this? No, because then it'll go stale, it'll go boring really, really fast. Do I think, Sandfall should do another game like this? Maybe, but if they were to kind of do something different, I wouldn't fault them for it. I definitely think this is a style of RPG that works really, really well for what Clair Expedition was, built upon. It was very clear that the entire, when they were coming up with enemies, they were coming up with enemies that worked around this system. They weren't just kind of making a system and making enemies just for effort. They definitely put a lot of thought process into it. And I think that's why this works so well. It's a very clean packaged game, especially with how the kind of characters have their own very, very strong situational use, as well as other ways that are more kind of brought in to help out the overall team. Like, again, I'll use CL as a good example of someone who has a very, very situational style. Hey, she can build up, damage multipliers this way, or you can just kind of use her as a buff. Hey, make one player take immediate turn. Hey, give strength, boost to the next attack person, etc., etc. Stuff like that I think fleshes out the game more so than I think it ever has any right to be. Because this game, again, for a team so small, making a game that feels this full and jam-packed is absurd. And I definitely think a lot of that is kudos to the systems that they invented with the combat. With that being said, it is not just the combat that makes this game amazing. The story also makes this game phenomenal. I think the narrative that they're saying in this game definitely hits on all type of aspects. It's full of drama. It's full of humor. Um, so many set pieces, so many different moments that I can look back and twists and turns that had me on the edge of my seat. This game, from a writer standpoint, they definitely knew what they were doing. They wrote characters that are lovable, characters that are hated, characters that just fit so well. There's definitely a tug and pull throughout the entire cast that makes you feel engaged. Like you want to know what comes next every time. Every story beat felt unique, but also kind of nostalgic. I think there's moments in this game where, you know, contrast the silliness with the seriousness in a way that made me feel like a lot of like older games did. I feel like nowadays so many games are so serious that they forgot that they're a game and they should be fun, and life is full of fun and life is full of humor, and it makes this game a lot more authentic when a character like Gustav makes a joke to Mael, and you know, it feels more personal. Those characters feel like they have a life to them, and I think that breathes such a fresh air into the gaming genre in 2025. I think especially this year when I look at a lot of the games that came out, this game definitely stands out because of the narrative they're saying. It's a very short narrative, I think, in comparative to most JRPG style games. You know, if you look at, you know, I'll use Metaphor Refantasy as a game that's huge, huge narrative, very in depth, very great. But when people look at that hour count, Jesus, that turns people away. But Clair Expedition, I beat it in 36 hours, and that was with quite a bit lollygagging, a little bit of kind of exploring the world, etc. And I'll still be able to beat it within a manageable time that isn't very off-putting. I think that is another testament to their storytelling abilities, that were able to tell a story in such short amount of time, especially a story this engaging, this full, this complete. Um, all of this stuff are things that this team does well as far as being efficient. And I think when we talk about games in 2025, I think a lot of them just aren't efficient. I think they either have fleshed out gameplay mechanics that kind of aren't necessarily needed, or fleshed out, you know, moments in games that aren't needed, and they kind of just more take away from the overall package than they do add to the package. And I think this kind of comes to where we are in 2025 when, you know, at this point in the gaming industry, we've kind of seen and done almost all of it. It's very hard to keep people, you know, feeling like they're wowed. And I don't think anyone's necessarily wowed by Clair Expedition, more so engaged and entertained. And I feel like they're able to be this way because of the efficient storytelling, because the efficient gameplay mechanics, because of the efficient way that this game kind of is laid out. This is a game that doesn't have a world map really. This is a game that doesn't really have fast travel like that. This is a game where, I mean, I'm gonna be honest, if this game wasn't so efficient, those type of things would drive me crazy. I remember when Starfield released and it was this huge full world, but they had no map, and that definitely threw people off and was a huge drawback to that game. In this game, it's definitely a minor setback. It's definitely a little annoying, but it definitely doesn't deter from the overall experience because the game is so efficient. There was never a moment where I was really, really lost as far as where I should go from A to B. No, if I wanted to go off the beaten path and go to C, D, E, etc., sure, that became a little bit harder. But overall, if I was just to mainline this game, there was no point where I was really lost about it because the map, even though it feels large and vast because of the amount of nooks and crannies you can explore, That being said, it is a very, small map comparative to, a lot of RPGs nowadays. I think, again, most of the moments and beats that happen narratively are all necessary and drag the story forward more so than really kind of hold us back. And I think, again, when we look at games that release nowadays, a lot of times they're fleshing out these worlds so large that most of the dialogue isn't necessary or doesn't move the story forward or doesn't add to the overall experience. I think they're just adding stuff for context sake, they're just adding stuff for the sake of adding stuff. And it's not really additive to the experience. It's just adding stuff and becomes, word vomit and doesn't help the overall package of the game. And I think that's what makes Expedition 33 a cut above the rest and why it's able to kind of hold an attention from a lot of the audience. I remember I was going through a trophy list and I seen the amount of people that were actually completing this game was actually kind of surprising. I think I kind of felt like most of the time most games aren't completed by like more than 20% of the audience. But seeing, I think this game was like 40% completed by the time I beat it, and again, that was like still pretty new into the, this game's overall lifespan. And that is really, really cool to see. And I think this is a game that when you start and you get to a certain point of the game, you have to see how this ends. You have to see where this story goes. And that is just such a testament to the developers, the story writers, the overall design of the game helps the momentum always stay moving forward. And I think if other developers can pull anything from this game, whether you're making a turn-based RPG or you're just making any game in general, I think the thing that they should learn to do is, one, become more efficient. Hey, from A to B, what do I have to say in this game? And how do I keep this story always going into that direction? Hey, if we have this gameplay mechanic, do we need every little, thing within our skill tree? Or can we just kind of cut it down, simplify it a little bit more in a way that is easier to digest, learn, and play? That way people aren't really taken back from, how do I play this game? What do I do here? Etc. Etc. I think the more you start to tutorialize and the more you start to add all these, complex systems that don't really add nuance to the game, they just add extra stuff. You're not really giving the audience anything that helps them play the game more. I think, friction is great, learning stuff is great in games, but if every game is jam-packed with the biggest skill trees you ever seen in this huge open world is full of all these NPCs that aren't really helping the game, then you're kind of just doing a disservice to your audience. You're just doing a disservice to your overall story. I think for years people have been saying we want smaller games and, you know, quicker to beat games, etc. And I don't think that's necessarily the 100% answer. I think if you want to make a long game, that's fine. If you want to make a huge open world, that's fine, etc., etc. But understand the efficiency of your game. Is your game telling us, compelling story from A to B? And if there's moments in there where it's just kind of side chatter for side chatter's sake and it's not really helping, then maybe you kind of add that more to the side of the game that's kind of more off the beaten path. So if people really want to do that stuff, they can go do it. But don't force players to kind of go through all these little things in the game that don't make the game better, per se. I think if something people could learn from Clair Expedition is make your game quick, make your game snappy, make your game with a lot of forward momentum, whether that be in the gameplay, whether it be in the narrative, whether it be in both, etc. Clair Expedition is definitely a game that has a story to tell and desperately wants to tell a story to everyone who's willing to, buy the game and play it. I think the gameplay is something that should be crowned as an amazing thing to see in 2025. I think the developers at Sandfall should be very, very impressed with the wide reception that they're getting, also just the huge achievement it is to create a game like this that resonates so hard with an audience. Obviously, if I was to review the game, I would say this game's amazing. This game is fundamentally one of my favorite games I played in a very, very long time. And if you haven't checked it out, you definitely need to check it out. I think for those people who are trying to gatekeep the turn-based RPG genre and say that, you know, Clair Expedition 33 and its fan base aren't real turn-based fans, I think that's so, gatekeeping, so drawing the line between their fans and my fans, and I don't think that makes any sense. I think we should all be happy that more people are playing turn-based RPG, and hopefully this does bridge the gap to, players to play more JRPGs or JRPGs inspired games. Um, will it? I have no 100% clear idea. I was already a fan of turn-based RPGs, so this just is right up my alleyway. Um, but overall, I definitely think that this game is such a useful tool. It's such a masterclass for people to kind of look at and say, hey, what is a good way to develop a great game in 2025? This game was developed with a smaller team of 30 people. This game was developed relatively, cheap. I don't think there's anything in this game that screams, multi-billion dollar, company made this game. Graphically it's good, but it's not the most graphically impressive game I've ever seen. I think the art style definitely helps this game go a long way. There's a lot of blurry textures all the time. There's a lot of cutscenes that look, I'm gonna be honest, not that great. But because the art style is so amazing, it kind of carries this game a lot farther than it ever could go or it has any right to go. I think the soundtrack and OST are so amazing that you don't really need a whole lot more, sound design wise. Just the music alone is just phenomenal. Um, Gameplay and narrative, obviously, amazing. So it's just those type of things that if you're gonna make a game, definitely learn where you need to stand out, learn what needs to be amazing, and maybe not all these other bells and whistles and polish and, extra. Maybe all that extra isn't really worth the price tag when you consider how much you actually have to sell, etc. Anyways, ranting a lot about Clair Expedition 33. I kind of hope I hit everything that I want to talk about. Again, overall, this game has just blown me away. The ending of the game, I think, is something that if you guys have played the game, please, you gotta get to the end. You gotta let me know how you experienced that, how you took in the ending of the game. For me personally, the ending of the game was insane. It definitely made me feel a lot of emotions that I don't think I've felt in a game in a really long time. So definitely mad applause, mad credit, kudos, flowers given to this team. I definitely think they cemented themselves as a top-notch team in the gaming industry, and I definitely look forward to whatever it is they make next. Anyways, that's gonna be this video. Let me know down below what you guys think. Like and subscribe and help me out, etc. Because I kind of miss making videos, and I kind of want to continue doing this. I love playing weird, niche games that have this type of passion behind it, and I hope we get to see a lot more in the future.